company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft, covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and of course, always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Now, today's guest has been name-checked on the show by countless theatre artists as an inspiring teacher and choreographer. She's a former head of dance at the Mountview Academy of Theatre Arts, and just some of her West End credits include working with Barry Humphries at Drury Lane, to Rat Pack Confidential, and even Death Takes a Holiday, with 4 productions at the Menier Chocolate Factory. Please welcome the one, the only, Sam Spencer-Lane! Welcome to the show.
Yay!
Coming up on today's show, I will be covering the latest dramatic news. On the platform, we have a song from Sleeping Beauty, the musical. And of course, I'll be interviewing Sam Spencer-Lane all about her life, career, and maybe even setting her some infamous Show People podcast challenges too. You are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats and Sam Spencer-Lane. Welcome to the show.
It's lovely to be here, I can't tell you.
Do you know what is so lovely about this? So, with all of the guests that I've had on, obviously the very first episode was with Cassidy Jansen.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about Cassidy later, of course. Cassidy Jansen, Julie Atherton, Ollie Saville, myself. I think you are the most name-checked person in the Show People podcast history, probably more than Sondheim, with people saying how important you have been in their development as an artist.
Oh, brilliant. I'm still only 30. Can you believe that?
What have you been up to recently? What have you been doing now you are no longer at Mountview?
I resumed my choreographic career because that was really ongoing at Mountview, and it's my passion, the dance with text, and it fascinates me, and it's sort of an extended hobby, I suppose, as it should be. So I've been carrying on with that and doing some amazing projects. I've looked at I think I left Mountview about it's about 6 years ago now, and those 6 years have been so full of amazing things that I would have missed, and it's just really exciting. So I've been mainly choreographing, and I still go back and do teaching and lessons here, there and everywhere, and it's really funny. I've never enjoyed my teaching so much since I haven't been at Mountview. I loved it, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I loved it at Mountview, but I've never ever enjoyed my teaching so much, and because the business is ever changing, it's wonderful to have more information to give to the students, and I'm still learning, as everyone is, all the time.
It's you were in the year that I was at Mountview, you were my head of dance, and I have so many memories of you, but one of my overriding memories is, with everyone in their offices, your little cells that you're all kept in, just your door always being so firmly open. Mm-hmm. And with all the admin you had to do, with all of the marking, the grading, the choreographing, and running that department, and yet amongst all of those duties, I don't think a day went by where I didn't see you slowly closing the door to go and talk to a student about something, yeah. and just being, well, you were vital to me then, vital to so many. What was it like? Being in an institution, as someone I know who thrives in the theatre?
It's really funny. It was a very, very big decision for me, and it came from Paul Saby, who was a very, very good friend and a bit of a mentor for me, because he taught me so much about the musical side of musical theatre, and I absolutely respected him, so much, and he inspired me, his work. He'd always was trying to talk me into going, come and be a part. And I was saying, for that reason that you've just mentioned, I just can't be a part of an institution. It's not me. And eventually it was at a time in my life where I just thought, do you know what, I'd give it 3 years. And it's only 3 years out of my life, and he said I could still carry on my choreography. And because I love teaching, and I think the teaching is at the heart of my choreography when I work. Although it's artistic, there's an element that sort of works with the actor and can help them along. So that's always been very, very fundamental. And so when I went to Mountview, I was really interested to see how, I could develop more skills, I think.
Yeah.
And so, it was a real change. And it was quite a shock, actually. It was, some of the things, because I was so artistic and so not institutionalized that it amused me quite a bit, but I enjoyed learning different tricks and sort of and I think it taught me a lot of detail, how the process was about detail as well. I think it taught me a lot, but in the end it got me.
And I mean, how did you maintain having, because the Mountview days were long, I went to Mountview and Guildford, and I would say a harder day was had at Mountview from my experience there than it was at Guildford. Because, you would go from, I think Julie Atherton joked, you would go from doing a high intensity jazz workshop to then doing some Alexander technique to an acting through song class, and just as a student, getting your mind into whatever point you need to focus on. But as staff, I mean, you had an intense timetable, plus all of the academic stuff that was being laden on top. And you obviously had to look after bringing in staff members. I remember you always bringing in fabulous guest artists. I mean, how did you stay sane at the same time as staying so positive as you are?
Well, the students kept me sane because of their enthusiasm. They were so grateful to be there. Well, not grateful. They were they felt so privileged to be there, and they loved it. So I think they kept me going. So any time that I got bogged down with detail and work and health and safety and all that kind of stuff, they would just kind of say, "Hi, Sam," and it would be it just sort of made you realize why you were there. And that's the wonderful thing about teaching students, of course, and especially that age. And so it was hard. I used to get there very early. It was just a time when I get up at 5:00. And I got into work at 7 o'clock, so I had a couple of hours before the students came in to do the kind of boring admin work. And then I felt I could be free and have the rest of the day free. I have a lot of energy. I did make sure that I didn't live near Mountview at the weekends, so I could not be served a pizza by any of the students, although that would have been nice. But it was nice to get away and have my own life. And so I think that's how I worked it. I put in a lot of hours, and I don't know whether I could have sustained that any longer. But I loved it. There was never a day I went in that I didn't love it, actually, which was amazing, because I ended up being there for over 10 years, and I only said I'd be there for 3. And that really surprised me.
I have so many happy memories of things like, you introducing my year to Sunday in the Park with George or Grand Hotel. In fact, I remember, I think it was a long day at one point, on a song and dance module, and you went, I think somebody got a song from Grand Hotel, and the room just went silent. I think it was probably only me and Matthew Gent that probably knew what Grand Hotel was. And you just went, how can none of you know what Grand Hotel is? You all need to know about Grand Hotel tomorrow. And just this disbelief of, but always with love, always with such love. Speaking of love and nurturing, obviously Paul Sabey, who I believe is probably the most important figure in musical theatre education in this country, period. I mean, he created these courses that have been replicated time and time again, and he's a very, very dear friend of yours. How did you and Paul, how did you meet, and how did you create this? Because you had an incredible bond in that school. Tell me about your story.
Do you know, it was fascinating, really, because I was a dancer at the time. I was dancing, and it was a very good friend of mine that had been working at this new place, Mountview, which was an acting school at that time. And she couldn't make her lesson. She was a dance friend of mine. And so I said, I lived near, and I said I'd go and do the classes for her. And I met Paul Sabey, and Paul was about 25, and he was a rehearsal pianist. And we were doing a workshop for Mountview, that was an acting school at the time. And I think Paul taught singing there. And we just hit it off. And I think because I trained in music before I'd gone to dance, and his playing was extraordinary. Yeah. And I can't remember what we were doing, but it was just inspiring. And I remember being able to create choreography because of this wonderful arrangement he'd done. And then he saw my work and said, "Oh, Sam, how about this? How about this?" And we just kind of connected on a level. And also we had a very wicked sense of humour together, which is quite nice. And so I met him when he was pre-Mountview days, really. And then he was asked by the principal at the time to start off a musical theatre course. And musical theatre courses, apart from places like Italia Conti, those kind of places, had never been heard of before, were rooted in acting. And he was asked to start off a musical theatre course, and he brought me on. And that's what became of a very, very close friendship. And I really started Mountview with him in the dance sense. And I used to do the graduations, and I used to do song press classes and dance classes, and introduce them to all my favourite musicals. The Grand Hotel thing, by the way, was only because I was in love with Tommy Tune at the time. And I thought he was the most amazing stager. So that was it. Yeah, so Paul and I, years and years ago, formed a very, very close relationship. And he was always, always loyal and when we were in the room together, it was wonderful.
Yeah. It's Paul is obviously now in Australia.
Yeah.
I think he's set. What did he set up? What's the name of it?
I can't remember. I should remember the exact name, but he's doing amazingly well, as he would do.
I think the big thing with Paul I found is, and again, it's that thing of being a frightened, teenager as I was at the time versus the age I am now. I would love to reconnect with him and to shake his hand and go, I understand. Because at the time he was terrifying. He terrified me. Absolutely. I thought he was the hardest professional I've ever met. Yeah. But you look back now and you go, but I understand where that was coming from. I understand that you had my best interests at heart.
Yeah.
But anyway.
He was just incredibly detailed. And that was something I learned from him. He was incredibly precise and detailed. And so he couldn't understand when anybody else wasn't.
Yeah.
And, he had this passion he was a teacher, I think, at heart. He was really a teacher more than anything. And he had this passion about passing on this knowledge. And he was so amazing. Yeah, so I totally agree. He taught me so much. So,
how did you feel towards the end of your time at Mountview?
Yeah, it was a combination of being there. I said, 10 years, and that was kind of, 10 years is the time you think, actually, Sam, you need to get back out there because musical theatre changes so very, very quickly, and never more than it did at that time. And it was just, everything was so changing so fast. So I knew I needed to go out. Also, when I was at Mountview, it became more and more institutionalized in the way that it had to become institutionalized. So it was about health and safety first rather than artistic values, or that's what I thought it was. And there were more meetings, and it was less about how I passed my knowledge on to the students and how I inspired. It was less about that all the time I was there. And so it sort of happened that Paul left, and that the kind of life at Mountview was very, very different to when I started there. And me feeling that I wanted to get out back into the business fully. And so it was a combination of all three things, really. And it just made every bit of sense. And I'm a great one for change, actually. I'm not scared of it. And I know I'll work hard and, embrace everything. So,
gosh, there are very, very few in this industry, but it is wonderful. It doesn't matter who I say your name to. Certainly I owe you so much, which I won't go into detail on this, but there are so many people that light up when they hear Sam Spencer-Lane, and actually, who would have thought somebody that thought, not an institution person, and actually you have been, I don't want to say mum because it's more than that, a teacher and companion for so many people at the beginning of their journey. And how wonderful now they've all graduated that you now get to work with them as we've done on various shows.
I know, well, it's a privilege for me. It's sort of like, it's really not aware of you doing that. The only thing I can say is I'm shamefully I love the business, and I love what I do, and I want to pass it on. I want everyone to love it. It's that simple, actually. So it's nothing, I think there are so many amazing mentors around, but it's great. I'm very, very proud of that, and I'm proud that to be a part of some people's journeys.
It's time for our first Show People podcast challenge.
Oh no,
it's a bit of a challenge. I have found, who knew, a dance quiz. I'm going to ask you.
Oh, I'm going to be rubbish at this. I just know.
Some of these are quite fun. Some of these are quite good fun. Okay. So, Sam Spencer-Lane, I'm going to ask you as many dance-related questions as possible within 60 seconds. Your time starts now. Tell me which composer is known as the Waltz King? Liszt, Dvorak, Strauss, Shostakovich, or Handel?
Strauss.
It is Strauss, correct. Tell me, when you put your right foot in, then you put your right foot out, then you put your right foot in and you shake it all about, you are doing the...
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Favourite question.
Which dance did not gain its popularity until the 1960s? The swim, the twist, the turkey trot, the funky chicken, or the mashed potato?
I'm going to say the turkey trot.
The turkey trot is correct. Which term originally referred to the dance music of Spanish gypsies? The gavotte, the mazurka, the fandango, or the flamenco?
Flamenco.
It is flamenco. A stately dance of French origin, popular in European courts up to the 18th century, was the polka, the rumba, the minuet, the can-can.
Minuet.
It was the minuet. Once considered risque, the high-kicking dance, first popular in the 19th century French music halls such as Folies Bergère, is the...
Can-can.
It is the can-can. Of course you knew all the answers to these. There we go. I'm going to take a little break and we're going to talk to Sam all about where everything started.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keat. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
So where was a little Sam Spencer Lane from?
Born in Harrogate, Yorkshire. Love it. I love Leeds and Yorkshire. It's brilliant. But very quickly moved to Brighton and then finally, when I was about 6 years old, to Gosport in Hampshire, which is in between Portsmouth and Southampton, by the sea. And that's where I sort of grew up until I left home. Incredibly, I had this dance. This is the most incredible story, actually. I had this dance class, these dance teachers, and run by two amazing women, Joan Tostevin and Pam Tostevin. And Joan Tostevin was married to Ben Stevenson, who was the head of New York City Ballet. And her sister, Pamela, had danced with Gene Kelly and all these famous, and it's a little place in Gosport. And so they brought over all the musicals. Ben Stevenson used to come and teach us ballet, and they brought these, Chicago, when they'd just been dancing with Chita Rivera and things. And they brought all these musicals over. And I'm sure that is why I went into musical theatre, because, I was doing sort of dance like song dances and doing festivals. And I was the first one to have all this material. And so it's come into sort of play now when I do musicals that I know all these random songs. So that's sort of where I was brought up, and my dancing kind of started, really.
Did you always want to be a dancer? Or what were the early ideas? Did you want to be a vet or something? Or?
Not at all. No, dancing was not on the radar at all. I loved it and I went there, but it was a hobby. And as I do everything with full enthusiasm. But no, I wanted to be, I think because my mother was an air hostess when it was very glamorous to be an air hostess. And so I think I wanted to do that, but then I realised it was more waiting than anything. So I changed, and I was it was either going to be a music degree or an art degree. So I was going to go off to college to either do music or art, which were my stronger subjects. And I was already doing a lot of music at the time. I'd done my grade 8 in the recorder randomly, and loved it. So so dancing was just a hobby and was not on the radar at all.
And why didn't you pursue? I mean, obviously, we're dealing with a very little Sam Spencer, but why did you go for dance over, say, art or music?
Right. So this is exactly what happened. My best friend at dancing school, I went to an audition for a very famous sort of Lionel Blair, I think it was at the time, but it was like a variety show that was touring at the time, and she went and asked me if I'd accompany her. And we were both 16, 17, and I said I would. And we went to the audition, and I got it.
Did your friend?
No. Bad friend. And it was, in those days, you got your equity card from it, and it was a really big deal and a really high-profile job. And so I went back home knowing that my parents would say no. And I was in the middle of A-levels, I think, this time. And they said... anyway, I pleaded and pleaded if I could do it because it was like for a summer season type thing. And they let me, they said I could do it as long as I came back and did my A-levels, straight after. I'd let me do this one thing, which was really good because I wasn't too sure where they were going to. Anyway, I still haven't done my A-levels.
And they've kept you back ever since, clearly.
So that's sort of how it happened that I went into dance. And from there, of course, you meet people, and then it went on and on and on and on and on. Yeah.
What's your first memory of going to the theatre?
My first memory, because in Gosport there's just the King's Theatre, which is in Portsmouth, and it was a school trip, and we went to see Godspell, Julie Covington in Godspell, and it was really random because it's a show I'm not particularly, it's not one of my favourite shows now, certainly. But it was that show that changed my life. And it was her, because she did this performance that was so truthful and so emotional and so integral to the plot, I felt. And she was wonderful, and I couldn't stop watching her. And that's what started me off. It's really strange. And it's really strange it should be her and that show. Yeah.
What kind of training did you do in later life, or did you just go straight into the business? Because, of course, training is not necessarily the way that it is today.
It was a very intense training in my local school. I took all my teacher's qualifications, and I was in the middle of taking I'd got to a very high stand in ballet, certainly, and tap. They're very good at tap there, and jazz. I had got to a certain level, and I was wanting to carry on the training, which I did do actually as I was dancing, and to complete all the things that I wanted to do, because I thought, even when I was dancing, that maybe I just would want to go into teaching.
Yeah.
And, open a school, that kind of thing. But the choreography then started to take over when I was in the business. And so that's how I started.
So, look, I'm not going to ask you to go back and try and remember every single dance credit that you had back in those days. But obviously we are talking about a very different time, especially being a woman, working in show business. I've seen some, extraordinary photos of you on Top of the Pops and things. Mm-hmm. Just give us a slight flavour of some of the people that you worked with as a dancer, because I know there's some fabulous stories in there.
It was amazing. I had a good 10 years as a dancer, if not more, actually. Yeah, probably more. But I did all the TV circuit, and I got into very quickly from this job. I went straight into the TV circuit and did all the light entertainment programs, and of the time when you had girl backing dancers, which nowadays would be quite shameful, but the girl backing dancers, in leotards behind them dancing, to the music. I did so a good 10 years of that, and it's kind of Jim Davidson type stuff. I did Val Doonigan, I did all these light entertainment programs, so Benny Hill, I did everything. And it was wonderful, actually. And I ended up doing French and Saunders and all of those, the modern things. So I had a really long career in it. I wasn't really a very typical dancer type, so I never used to... in my spare time, I used to go and watch. And I remember I was doing, I think, a Benny Hill show at the time, and Bella Emberg was there, and she said I used to sit with her and just watch what was happening when I wasn't on. I used to sit because I was fascinated with TV. And she gave me actually one of the best advice I've ever received. And she just said, Sam, just, watch these masters at work, watch their comic timing. And there were people like Henry and McGee and Bob Todd and all those amazing people that were working. And she said, just watch what they do and how they do it. And I did. I used to not be with the dancers in the dressing room. I used to come up front and just watch with Bella. Yeah. And we just used to learn. And I think that taught me a lot about musical comedy in musical theatre.
When did you decide that you didn't want to be a dancer anymore?
I didn't really. When I was, I'd been dancing since 17, so it was, I was quite early. I was dancing when I was very young. But when I was 23, because I'd been watching in the background, I'd met a lot of the cameramen and a lot of the guys, and one of the cameramen who I was very good friends with, who now actually directs Paul Kirage, who directs Strictly the Ice program, the
celebrities not killing themselves on ice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
Anyway, he was a cameraman at the time, and he was doing series about illusions. He had a passion about magicians and illusions, and he asked me whether I'd consider choreographing his children's series he was doing. So and I was 23, and it's my first choreographic job. And we did 2 series of that, and that was my very first job, and I learned very much, thanks to him on that job. And it was amazing because we used to put grand illusions into vaudeville situations. And so do a huge production number, and then the magician would sort of take over. So it was a wonderful experience. And from that came a lot of my work. It just then manifested into other things. And because there was an element of theatre about it, I was able to transfer to theatre very easily, although my original choreographic career was in TV.
Yeah. So again, give me an idea of some of the other things, because that sounds magical. I'm already thinking, why is that show not on our televisions now?
It's funny, actually, because a lot of the magicians, like, Paul Keeve was a part of it, and, the people who are very relevant now, it was amazing. And it was before its time, really. I did that. I did a lot of children's television, a series called Melvin and Maureen's Musicogram, a lot of those kids' television. And then I went into light entertainment. I did a few Jim Davidson shows, and we did an amazing show where we went to the Falkland Islands, and as a documentary at the time, and to show how variety kind of informed the way of life for soldiers. And we went to the Falkland Islands at the time was the most incredible place. It was in the middle of nowhere, and there were only poets who lived there, and those kind of people. And there was this TV documentary made about it, and about us dancing on tanks and things. It was the most amazing experience. So those kind of things, and I did that. Then introduced me to Barry Humphries, and when I was 26, I did my first West End.
So that's what I was just going to ask. I mean, there is a. It's such a wonderful credit. Obviously, you, unlike other choreographers, you're very select about your CV. I mean, as I've joked about with other people on the show, your CV could be available in paperback. However, what I am obviously focusing on today is obviously your theatre credits. But when I was going through, the wonderful credit, which is working with Barry Humphries in a little theatre called Drury Lane.
Yes.
So tell me how that came about.
It was so funny. It was such a big thing. I was introduced to Barry through my agent at the time, and John Ashby, and he was an amazing agent. He was a personal agent to Silverback and Petula Clark.
Wow!
And he has stayed a good friend actually even now. So he introduced me to. He said Barry was looking for a choreographer, and a female choreographer would work well with Barry for many reasons. And I met Barry, got on very well with him. But I was only 26, and it was sort of my first theatre job. And so it was very, very daunting. And I met him, and he's the most eccentric, wonderful, charismatic man I've ever met. He's so complex in a very, very good way, but it sort of suited me. And it was a really lovely time. He's also very odd in the way that he was at the height of his career then. And we had people like Elton John come to see us. The show was really highly publicised. And he had to go up at one point in the cherry picker.
Right.
Because they men throw gladioli out to the audience randomly. And we were rehearsing, and there was no director, so it was only really me and him and a friend of his that kind of co-directed with Barry. And the funny thing, the cherry picker went right out into the audience, and Barry was afraid of heights, but Dame Edna wasn't.
Oh my word!
Which is it's bizarre, isn't it? And but actually knowing Barry, knowing how he works. Although it doesn't make any sense, it made every bit of sense. Yeah. And so we had to rehearse with Dame Edna only out on the cherry pick. He had to get dressed to be able to go out.
How fascinating.
Yes, isn't that amazing? But that's Barry was so interested in the acting and the character. And I think, again, that taught me a lot about it, because it was such a comedy character, but he went into so much detail with her and the Sandy Stone character and all the characters in the show that, he completely absorbed himself in the character to be able to, perform.
Because somebody else I know who worked with him, which a lot of people don't realise, was George Stiles, who was his, I think he was his personal MD for a bit of time.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know if you guys had worked together or whether you realised that you'd worked together.
Do you know, I only met George properly recently. I just did a pilot for a TV thing recently. And lovely, lovely guy. And we sort of said it was so funny we haven't met because he wasn't the pianist then. There was Victi Silva, a pianist, was working on that show, who was, because he wanted a girl kind of crowd around him, I think, for that particular show.
Yeah.
So I didn't meet him. So isn't it funny?
It's such a small business, isn't it? But who would have thought Sam Spencer-Lane, George Stiles, and Barry Humphries? That's a party that I would go to any time of the week. Let's talk a little bit about your involvement with the Bridewell Theatre, which is a theatre that has changed so much over the years. But obviously when you were working at the Bridewell, you did things such as The Ballad of Little Joe, Is There Life After High School, which is a show I adore, and you obviously did the UK premiere of a little show that everyone now knows called Song for a New World. Whereabouts in your life was working with the Bridewell? Was that quite an early theatre sort of place to get involved in?
It really was. It was Clive Pageant was there at the time, who was an amazing director. And it was wonderful because they were doing what the Chocolate Factory was doing when they first started. Then they were researching new shows, and it was quite a new thing at the time. And my whole thing about musical theatre was that I wanted to do new shows. I felt quite passionately for some reason about this, that I didn't want to rehash something that had been done so well. I wanted to create new shows all the time, and the Bridewell were doing that. And I managed to get into the Bridewell, and then it was wonderful because it taught me about the Sondheim shows. They did this wonderful compilation show about unknown Sondheim songs, and so I learned so much. But and that's where I met Jason Robert Brown for the first time, because he was new then, and he was doing songs from New World. And he was, we rehearsed the show, and it was new, and we had wonderful people in it. And Jason came over to see it in the second week, and then to work with us on it. And I just remember this man, and he sat down at the piano, and his hands, he was doing King of the World.
Yeah.
And he was explaining about the text in the musical arrangement, about all the chains clinking and all of that kind of stuff. And he said, "Can I just show you?" And he sat down at the piano, and his hands sort of did a comedy like Tom and Jerry, where he hit the keyboard so hard that you couldn't see his hands moving. And but honestly, we all sat there and just listened to this amazing man play this amazing music. And, it was before its time, really. And he's since, of course, done amazingly well. And I was so privileged to be a part of the beginnings. And, those songs kind of have informed, future musical theatre songs, I think. So the Bridewell was a really big thing for me, because it put me on the map for new musicals, and introduced me to a lot of amazing people. Jason Carr, Stuart Pedler, and all these people that are so passionate about what they do.
Whereabouts are we in your life? Sort of, is this in the sort of 1990s?
Yeah, it's 1990s and all the way throughout. Because what happened was, back to the original question about how long I spent dancing and choreographing, I'd overlapped for a bit of choreographing. So the Barry Humphries and the TV had overlapped with my choreography, and French and Saunders, and I did the series Bottom Things, and all the Young Ones type series. That was at the end of my career, and so at that time I was then starting to move more into musical theatre.
Yeah,
and especially from the Barry Humphries experience, which gave me more theatre knowledge. And I'd been doing pantomimes, of course, for years, but. And then that's when the Bridewell took over, and I started to do things at the Bridewell. So that was all the way through the 90s. I just choreographed and really put my mind on theatre. I had been working at Mountview before, not as head of dance, and I did took a few lessons in New York, movement and acting lessons for about 3 years, so I could just have more knowledge about the acting in dance, and that was a really important time in my life.
Now, there's a few other credits I really want to ask about. First of all, because I've never asked you about this. I don't know why, afterwards in a pub we haven't chatted about it. What was the UK tour of The Demon Headmaster?
Brilliant.
I know the children's story, and I remember the
Yeah.
TV show. What was the UK tour of Demon Headmaster?
Well, it was my good friend Matthew White who came to me with it, and we were quite young. At that time we were sort of just starting out, and so it was this big tour. A lot of money had been put into it, and we had. It's really actually funny because the people that were leads were Giles, who's in Hamilton.
Yeah,
he was one of the
Giles
leads.
Troera.
Yes, exactly, and. Sam Kenyon was another lead, and and Elliot Davis was our musical director.
Right.
And it's sort of all these people that now have gone off and done amazing things. And we started, and we just loved the show. It's so funny. It was very, very well written, and we just sort of got ourselves in the studio. And it was we started in Bromley, usual place, and then toured. And I became resident director on it because I had to put the different children into different. Venues because that was the gimmick, I suppose. So I spent my life going around the country teaching random children how to sit and stand up from chairs. But it was a wonderful, wonderful show actually. And in fact, it's really funny because when I was at Mountview, people always used to come up to me and say, "Oh, I was in the chorus of Demon Headmaster. I know you."
And you have to go, "Oh, I remember. Right. Of course, I remember."
That's right. So I had forgotten about that actually. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a really good laugh, and we had. There's just some wonderful people in it. And who was one of the leads? We'd actually, Sheridan Smith was going to go into it, but she got her first break. We'd cast her, and she got her first break at the Donmar to go into the Woods, I think it was. And so we lost her, and we used Lizzie Renahan came in, who was equally as wonderful. And it was a really interesting time.
Hello, this is Simon Lipkin, and you are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. Or you're not listening to it. And these are just the voices in your head.
It's time for dramatic news. Today's top stories. A reimagined production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is to run at the London Palladium next year, 28 years after it was first staged there. The Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice musical will play from June 26th until September 8th, 2019. Casting and the creative team are yet to be announced. Bonnie Langford has been cast in the upcoming production of the Dolly Parton musical 9 to 5. She will play the character of Ross Keith alongside Louise Redknapp, Natalie McQueen, Amber Davis and Brian Connolly at the Savoy Theatre in London's West End. 9 to 5 runs from January 28th until August 31st, 2019. Theatre critic Quentin Letts has left the Daily Mail after 14 years in his role. Letts has acted as a parliamentary sketch writer for the Mail since 2000, taking up the role of theatre critic 4 years later. Letts' reviews have attracted much controversy over the years, including being labelled a racist for his review of an RSC production, saying that an actor had only been cast in a role because he was black. It is understood he will continue writing theatre reviews, but for the Sunday Times. Secret Cinema has announced its upcoming project for summer 2019. The company will present iconic 2006 James Bond film Casino Royale, with the event promising to open the doors to the world of Bond, complete with martinis and a shady criminal underworld. As per all Secret Cinema shows, the project will be presented at a secret location. After initial immersive experience, punters will then watch the film itself, enhanced with live actors recreating moments from the 2006 movie. Dates for the production are yet to be announced. And finally, Caroline Flack will join the West End production of Chicago from the 10th of December 2018. The Love Island presenter will play Roxy Hart in the show, alongside YouTube and Drag Race star Todrick Hall as Billy Flynn, Josephina Gabriella as Velma Kelly, Maz Murray as Mama Morton, and Paul Ryder as Amos Hart. Have you got a story you want us to talk about? Email info@arian-productions.com.
Hello, this is Frothy, and you can listen to me talk some nonsense about eating guinea pigs on the Show People podcast with the lovely Andrew Keats.
So let's go and have a look at some other things. So one of probably the very, very big West End credit that you had was when you did Rat Pack Confidential at the then Whitehall Theatre, no longer the Whitehall, of course, now Trafalgar Studios in all of its glory.
Yeah.
So tell me about doing a musical staging of The Rat Pack.
Well, it was at the time. It was the play. Rooted in the play, and it was a wonderful piece, and it was really well received because it was about their darker days and their troubles and their tribulations. And at the same time, the Rat Pack was going on. The more commercial Rat Pack was going on elsewhere. So it was very. It probably didn't. It ran for about a year, I think, but it probably would have run longer if the other. But yeah, it was fascinating actually to learn all about the lives of these four men and their love affairs and their the way they got into the business, and also to find the casting for those four men was because they had to be amazing actors, which they were, and but also like Sammy Davis Jr. had to be able to dance, and it was wonderful. It was the most fascinating thing because, it was one of those things that influenced my life. I love Sammy Davis Jr. I love Dean Martin. I love Frank Sinatra. And it was just wonderful to know more about them, really.
Now, there's a wonderful Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, which a lot of people haven't heard about it. And it's got beautiful songs in it, like 10 Minutes Ago, for example, and the Ugly Sisters Lament, which is one of the funniest things I've ever heard of a musical adaptation.
Yeah.
Cinderella at Bristol Old Vic.
That was one of my favourite jobs. The lovely Tim Sheeder, before he was at Regent's Park, directed it, and Phil Bateman MD'd. And we were all three of us very good friends. At the time we used to hang around quite a bit together. And we lived in a house in Bristol and put this wonderful, wonderful show on. And, for all of us, it was the beginnings of our career, really, and it was something that we really wanted to do. And Tim had this amazing concept about it being the 50s, and with ducks on the wall and the whole thing, and it was just incredible. And just the Rodgers and Hammerstein, obviously big fan because the writing is so good and the music is so beautiful. And again, we had amazing people. Helen Hobson was in it, amongst many other people. Just a fantastic time. And it hadn't been done, as you said before. And it was a real privilege, how lucky.
And this is something, I know what I do, what works for me to research for as a director for a show. But as a choreographer, what do you do when a director says, right, we're going to set it in the 1950s and you're going to have a Rodgers and Hammerstein score, and these are the abilities of the cast that you've got. How do you approach understanding a show's movement? How do you get into that place where you can start visualizing?
Well, I do what I do in any case at home, which is saturate myself in the music firstly, and literally watch clips. And I do this if I have the luxury of about 3 months before, and just every given moment is what I would do naturally, listen to music and watch clips. That's what I do. And so I would just saturate myself in that era and that period, and absolutely, and then not take just with instinct choreograph from what I remember, so that I'm already have got that in my system. And but on Cinderella we had a revolve actually at the time, and so that was the first time I'd worked with a revolve. And at Bristol, I think they set one up in the other room, and it was fascinating. I was really interested. It was the ballroom scene, interested in the patterns, and at that moment of the waltzing and how that fitted with a revolve was fascinating me. So it was wonderful, and there was a lot of prep for that. And Tim, always pushes the boundaries. Always does. And in that time, he was really asking for different approaches, and so we got on very, very well together. So we all communicated very well and just tried different ideas. So it's just saturation really of the era and the vision of the director, and the dance style that was true in that day, and how that can be worked with the piece, and it's fascinating. I love it. It's sort of like doing a project at school.
My favorite thing about working with you, we'll chat about the shows you've done together in a bit, but my favorite thing about when we work together is it doesn't matter if we've got somebody, who's fresh out of the Royal Ballet, to somebody who might have done a foundation course at, Miss Cynthia's School of Dance. You always make our cast members look fantastic.
Yeah.
Like there's never, I hate it when I see a show where there's clearly an actor that's perhaps struggling with dance and they're still being forced to do the same old bits and pieces. Like, you make actors move brilliantly and you make dancers act beautifully through dance. And there's this meeting point in the middle that you just find this physical language for a show which is comfortable and yet beautiful storytelling.
This is the thing about it. My mission, the why I find choreography fascinating is I said originally, I find choreography, it interests me how it lends itself to a plot and how it takes the plot further. And so I'm very, very interested in how dance fits into script, into text. It really fascinates me. So my whole passion was West Side Story. That's what inspired me. How Jerome Robinson made language that he created into dance. And this really does inform my work. So it doesn't really matter standard-wise who I get. I'll use what I get, because also it's not about my work. It's about the whole thing. This is for me personally, and how my dance can help the plot and help the director's vision. Whilst I can then invent, which is wonderful for me as well. So it's very, very important to use what you've got and to let them bring their skills and then hone them in and create that language together. And so I've always done that, which is why it probably sits easier, because I'm not concentrating on my vision and Sam Spencer Lane choreography. It's about how I can use that person. And then I learn as well, which is great. And
now there's a production it's a very important show to me. I know it's a very important show to you. The Hired Man at Salisbury Playhouse, which obviously won the TMA for Best Musical.
Yes.
As you know, I have a wonderful relationship with Howard, and anybody else that's a good light, let's call them, anybody that loves Howard stuff.
Yes.
That was such a wonderful production. You had new songs added, like Day Follows Day. Tell me, The Hired Man is it's almost the antithesis of what people expected of musical theatre at the time.
Yes.
How did you get involved? And tell me about that wonderful cast and creative team you're working with.
It was fantastic. Jo Reed, who she's just finished working at Lambda, and I've since done a few productions with her recently. Wonderful Jo Reed, and she's so I choreographed her production, and funnily enough, it was Rosalie Craig's debut.
Was it?
Yeah, she was playing one of the three girls. Yeah,
no.
So it was her very first job out of college. So which is wonderful, isn't it? And even then,
whatever happened to her?
Yeah, I know,
leading company.
She was just wonderful then. She was so open and generous. So it was. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was a really good process, and for me, it was a real big jump for me, because it really did come from the acting, and obviously every musical does, but this, the text is so good, and the emotional sort of plot is so strong, and I love also working with that kind of army, that sort of strength, in the vocab. So it was fascinating. It was a real big kind of shift for me, and so pleased it did well, because there were some amazing people, in it.
And that's the kind of work that you're very much attracted to. We're going to talk about the stuff we've done and the Menier stuff as well. But isn't it interesting where we were talking about early days of appearing on things like Top of the Pops as a dancer, but actually your passion is great story and often great drama in musical theatre, rather than say what perhaps the man on the street might call, jazz hands musical theatre.
Yeah.
Why, where does that love of new writing and that work of integrity come from, when perhaps instead you could do something, perhaps, no disrespect to it, but something a bit more traditional, and probably a bit easier?
I don't really know is the honest answer, but I do know that two things were, my parents left 2 records to me, CDs. They were, one was Carmen Jones and one was West Side Story.
Oh.
Amazing. And I listened to them on loop, as you do when you're a theatre kid. And both those stories and I watched the films, and I listened to the music, and I reenacted them, and I made up different choreography to them. And both those shows influenced me, and I really felt that it was about the whole thing, about the acting with the with the singing and the dancing that really got to me. When I was a dancer, I did it was a very glamorous career, and I did a lot of TV, but I was always used for the character bits as well.
Yeah.
Because I always loved the acting. So, that did go through it, but it was also a very different sort of art. So I think all the time I was looking to get back into the text. And I do think it's just in my system, and I think I love the acting. I never wanted to act myself, but I absolutely loved it. And I loved the medium of dance and how they collided, really. So I think that's probably the most honest answer I can say.
No, it's funny because I feel the same way, but the other way around. As somebody with dyspraxia and, I have such a love and fascination with dance, perhaps because I don't understand how somebody's brain can remember a routine that's 15 minutes long and be able to perform. Like I longed for the days of, being able to understand that physicality, but I don't. My fascination is words and text and life. But I understand that. I totally understand.
Yeah.
And that's why I fall in love with dancers whenever I see them on stage, because I just go, that is so beyond what I could ever do.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because I feel the opposite about acting. I know as a dancer, it goes to muscle memory, then I can work with it. And I know how to get out of it if I go wrong. As a dancer, I did, but as an actor or a singer, if I went wrong, it would be absolutely like disaster.
This is casting director Annie Rowe, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. I hope you've learned your sides.
What's lovely having you sat opposite me now. Again, I would love to go back and, put my arm around my 17, 18-year-old self at Mountview, who had a very tough time and had a lot of loss. And obviously left Mountview after a year to go to Guildford. But it's sort of a message I want to say to you, but also to any teachers out there, your kindness and patience and expertise and passion, to always have time for, perhaps some of the more rebellious of us, such as myself. What the most wonderful thing was to walk away from that building. In fact, my last memory of looking at Mountview was after I found out somebody had passed away. And you just said, I'm sorry, in the car park. And I walked away. And I didn't walk back to Mountview until, I think I was in my second year at Guildford. And it was really late one night. And I was in the area. And I thought, I wonder if I can go. And I just walked up to Mountview. It was late, really late at night. Walked up to Mountview and looked at it and just went, gosh, that feels like lifetimes ago. And found an amazing sense of peace, but also looked at the moment where you stood. And obviously after Guildford and becoming a director, the most wonderful thing was, and I've done this with quite a few of my teachers, where I go, because you had the time and the patience and the love and the integrity as well. It's not just about, you were nice to me, I'm giving you a job. Because you were so brilliant in your facilitation, of course, you then go back as a director with producers behind you going, I do know a brilliant choreographer, thanks very much. And I've loved that as a student-teacher relationship to now be mates working together, because, let's be honest, in those institutions, it can be very easy to discount some of the tricky students.
It's wonderful for me as well, though. That's happened a couple of times with you and with a couple more people, that it's a real privilege, because I don't think that we're, of course, we're not any better. We just have more experience. And the younger student will often lead the way with ideas, and it's up to us to follow and to always keep learning. And then maybe our experience will help. So I'm a really big believer in that. I'm a really big believer in having humility and just listening, not just barking all the time. But it's interesting with those students, you see them, and it isn't that they're not achieving, it's that they've got a will and a passion that doesn't often conform with institution. I think I basically understood that.
Yeah.
And so I related to those people, and whilst I couldn't change the
terrible,
rules.
isn't it?
That's right, exactly. I could pull them in and just say, look, play the game, just do what you need to do, get what you need to get from this. And so I really related to yourself and people that I could see. Above everything, if someone comes in with passion, and I can see in their eyes, and I could see that with you, it's you just sort of know that person's going to find their way, and you want to say that to them.
Yeah.
It might not be at this college, at this time, but yeah, absolutely, I absolutely relate to that completely.
Well, this links to us working together.
Yay.
On the European premiere of Rooms of Rock Romance, which was me, you, Mark Horman is musical supervisor, Barney Ashworth is as MD, and of course our enormous cast of two, Cassidy Jensen and Alexis Jarrett. And I just have so many happy memories working with you on that show. Wasn't it brilliant?
It was just incredible, actually. And it was I just left Mountview, if you'd remember, and it was an opportunity to do a new musical, and with you and with Cassidy, who's a very old friend of mine, and it was like a no-brainer. And I remember you gave me the music. And even then, because I was when I was a dancer, I'd had a pop career as well. So I'd been involved in a lot of rock music, and so completely related to this wonderful music. Honestly, it was, and Cassidy's voice and Alexis Gerard, it was fantastic, and I just fell in love with the piece. In fact, I still really want to do it.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, for listeners who don't know what it was, I mean, I always used to enjoy seeing the tagline, which was a Jewish Scottish punk rock musical. I mean, and we didn't get Arts Council funding even by doing that. But obviously written by Paul Scott Goodman and Miriam Gordon, which most people probably know. Paul's work, especially for Bright Lights, Big City. That's probably what he's most famous for.
Yeah.
But, I look back on those days. I mean, obviously Cassidy is soaring high in everything she's doing. And Alexis, I remember working on where he has to be a father at the door.
Yeah.
And says, look after my baby girl or whatever. It's a lovely speech. I remember Alexis being terrible, like absolutely terrible. And I was like, you are so unfocused today. What is going on? And he went, just found out I'm going to be a dad. And bless him, he'd come into rehearsal, kept it to himself. But I also remembered, like, we had, 4 door frames, 4 segments of the stage and an upper segment of the stage, and that was it. And 2 actors and a band on stage.
Yeah.
I just remember the storytelling that you would bring out of just a doorway, just a look, with nothing else.
Well, you remember the guitars in it was a magical piece. I think it would be so good today, that amazing music.
Do you know what I think its problem was? And if you want to listen to it, it is on Spotify.
Yeah.
I think the problem it's got is because it's not a groundbreaking story. You know what I mean? For me, it was a uplifting, thoughtful. The music I find electric. I mean, it did things to me. But I think it was because it wasn't worthy.
Yeah.
And it was one of the only things I'd ever done that wasn't a worthy piece. It was it's about a couple in Scotland in the rise of punk rock music, you know, and it wasn't a, avant-garde piece. It had a start, middle, and finish.
Yeah.
I will never forget Cassidy singing Happiness and My Choice. And I'm not going to say what those are about. Go and listen to them and sob like we did. But yeah, that was a wonderful reconnection with you to go from teenage Keats to sort of slightly older Keats.
It was a wonderful place for me to restart my choreography again, actually, of that very truthful. I fell in love with the piece completely and the people and on it, and just had the best time. And it was really important for me, actually.
Mentioning Cassidy Jensen, because Cassidy, obviously, on the very first episode of this podcast, spoke so in-depthly about, knowing you since she was literally a little. In fact, I think she always jokes, I weed myself in Sam's glasses or something. So how did you and Cassidy form this amazing friendship?
Well, what it was this is the early days of Paul Saby again. I was doing summer workshops with him. And she was a child. She was about 10 years old, and she came into one of these workshops. And I was, at the time, I thought my life revolved around these workshops, and they were very, very important, and they should be seen by the world. So I was, in my director mode, and just putting my everything into these, performances that would be seen by parents at the end of the week. And she came in, and I just, I remember saying to Paul, "You must see this girl. She's, a good dancer, but she's got this incredible voice." And so Paul came to see her, and she was singing Black Velvet randomly. I was doing a dance to Black Velvet, and of course, and he said, "Oh, Sam, she's incredible. Tell her that she must train that voice, and she must, come and visit Mountview, and when she's ready, and all this." And so that's how I knew her, and I became a very good friend. And then I did the one thing I never ever do, and I haven't done since. And I got to know her mum very well because she brought her year after year to these workshops. And I went up to her mother and said, "You really should get Cassidy trained because she's really very good, Yeah. And I never say this, and it's my younger self that said that, but yeah. And I just knew from that point, and it's wonderful because CJ she's like us. She loves it, and she's a really lovely human being. She is grafted for this, and it's lovely because I love seeing the people go through stages rather than just get lucky immediately. And everything she deserves that she gets. Really, she's wonderful.
And taking Cassie, which leads us on to obviously another show we did, Dessa Rose at Trafalgar Studios, which just one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. Where of course we thought, right, no, we'll do our auditions for Ruth, this red-haired character. We can't possibly ask CJ to do another show. And then after seeing God knows how many people, we all just looked to each other and went, should we just ask CJ to do it? Because she's going to be brilliant. And what a different show that was. Tell me about your experience. Obviously, I can go on about it for days, but tell me about what made Dessa Rose so important to you.
Again, the wonderful thing about, Rooms and Dessa Rose, they were very influential musicals for me. Dessa Rose was incredible. We got this amazing cast, didn't we?
The most incredible cast.
It's just like, I couldn't believe it. And they all bounced off each other, and I felt the story was so relevant, and the music so beautiful, and it was just a lot of people together who wanted to be there. That's what I felt, and who wanted to make the most amazing piece of musical theatre.
Yeah,
and it's one of my proudest moments, I think, that show, and it's. The choreography, we were in a very small theatre, obviously the Trafalgar Studios, and Cynthia Erivo with...
Whatever happened to her.
Yeah, exactly. With Cassidy as the two women. And again, I think it's a woman's thing as well that's very relevant for me, about these two strong women, fighting. It was just so beautiful. And to be able to create a language, it was because it was a small studio, I was having to create a language for the movement that would break occasionally into dance, which is again what I really enjoy doing.
Can you believe we fit 24 people into Trafalgar Studios too?
An audience.
And a band as well, on top of that.
I know. I remember going in and seeing the studio and thinking, oh my goodness.
I remember little fights with Dean Austin, because you would move the cello like 2 inches to the right.
Right.
So you can't have those. You can't have it. I genuinely need that.
Or placing the bow. Yeah,
bowing, that was it. I need enough bowing room.
Yeah, right.
There was. I remember something you did so beautiful. Something really beautiful. We had the wonderful Michael Brown, who, funny enough, is the mother of Sunita, which I didn't know. We cast her because she was brilliant. She said, "Can my daughter come to press night?" I said, "We can't fit her in." She said, "Oh, my daughter's Sunita." We went, all right, we'll see what we can do. But I remember she was telling stories about how by picking cotton, the hands would wither because of having to grasp the cotton and how you would keep it from...
Yeah.
And I remember you and her talking about that, and then in the choreography weaving into the cotton picking with this beautiful lyrical...
Oh, it's lovely. And just the research on that. You asked me the question before about how do I approach something. The research for that was just wonderful. And seeing these women working, and it fascinates me, like, the very obvious factory movement that you can use for choreography, but in a field, in an open field, in a hot field, about those cotton pickers. And something about it really sort of inspired, me for the movement, for the essence of the movement for that. And it was wonderful.
And then we get into, and again, so this is the current show, the last show that we've done together. It won't be the last. So we then had the honour of bringing back Jacques Brel, is alive and well and living in Paris, the world's longest title. But we had a in fact, funny enough, to my right, there is a Jacques Brel poster up there. What a cast we had.
Lovely Daniel.
Daniel Boys.
Daniel Boys. It's funny, actually, because this is really strange, but in my youth, I used to listen to Jacques Brel. I just did. And this is it's so funny. So many times I find that shows come back at me. I'm waiting to do Carmen Brown, by the way.
Yeah.
That all of these Jacques Brel, it was the emotion in his music again, as we've spoken about before. And so when you said to do Jacques Brel, I've always wanted to do it. And I think I remember I did a workshop at Mountview. I just invented one because I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And so the privilege of doing that. And then again, we got this amazing cast.
Yeah.
So it was...
Eve Policarpou, of course.
Yes, Daniel Boys.
David Burt.
And the lovely...
And Gina Beck, whatever happened to her. Yeah.
Beck. And,
rock star.
And all four of them are such, again, wonderful human beings. And we created this quite eccentric piece, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the best way. And it was like solving and inventing. I remember that. And the music, so wonderful.
I think what I loved about it, though, and again, I said this about you earlier, I'm ladling you with compliments, but it's all true. Where I had, the astonishing Eve Policarpou, who is just one of my favourite human beings on the planet. Eve Policarpou and David Burt, who are of a certain age, an older age, and then you've got the two whippersnappers, the gorgeous Gina Beck and Daniel Boys, and yet the way that you wove all four of those characters to be able to do routines together, to suit their physicality, their characters, was just wonderful. And also, it was really lovely to have a stage where we did have older performers working with such brilliant talent like Daniel and Gina, and that being in harmony, rather than just looking at a cast of, no offence to shows that are this, a load of 20-year-olds straight out of drama school. It was lovely to have a bit of grit behind it. Yeah. And also, some of the best work I've ever seen of Daniel Boys do ever. Like, he had such a focus in that. And no, I was very proud of him.
He's a wonderful worker. I've worked with him since, actually. And it's he's a real pleasure because, again, it's one of these few people, like Cassidy, actually, you come across that he loves what he does, but he works hard and he, with love, works hard with generosity, which is a wonderful... But it's funny because all four of them were very generous by nature, and so they would be up for options. And with the style, the style of David... Yeah, David Burt. Yeah. He was so elegant and understood vaudeville and understood all those. And then so the others could learn from that. And then you had the power of Gina, in the comedy. She is such a witty lady. And it's wonderful. Yeah, a great time.
This is Liam Tamney, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. I see you shiver with anticipation.
It's time for the Show People podcast platform, the part of the show where we like to give some airtime to showcase new writing. And today's work is from Sleeping Beauty, the musical, with a book and lyrics by Ian Curran and music by Simon Hansen and Peter Vint. The show is a full-length, family-friendly musical. It has been workshopped in London and now has interest from amateur and mid-scale professional companies in the UK for 2019. Now, the soundtrack is available on Amazon Music, iTunes, Spotify and YouTube, and is registered with PRS. The soundtrack features Maria Coyne as Princess Aurora. Maria is currently standby Glinda in the West End production of Wicked. Joel Harper-Jackson plays Prince Perrault, and Joel is soon to be playing Charlie Price in the UK tour of Kinky Boots. The villain, Hellicent, is played by Amy Goodwin, who is currently in the UK tour of Wicked as well. Ian Curran worked as a professional actor for over 10 years and now works as a theatre programmer. Simon Hansen is currently the musical theatre tutor at Edinburgh's MGA Academy of Performing Arts, where he met Peter Vint and formed the jazz duo Too Smooth. Ian has worked with Simon on various pantomimes before he worked with Royal Caribbean Cruises as musical director on We Will Rock You. Now we're going to hear a song called Take My Chances. Princess Aurora decides to run away and pursue her aspirations. She has been held down for too long and feels now is the time to make her own mark on the world. Performed by Maria Coyne, here's Take My Chances from Sleeping Beauty, the musical.
Once upon a time, tales, they always come true. I would skip to the end without reading them through. If life was the same, how great would it be if it came with its own happy end guarantee? guarantee, but there's no certainty. It comes down to me. This path that I'm taking is not set in stone. I will make my own way. I will make it alone. I will live out my dreams now that I refuse to live out a life I did not choose. It's my time to choose. I have dreamed, I have dared. Now I'm prepared to go out and take my chances and make no mistake that while I'm awake, I'm gonna go out and take my chances. I've started a race without knowing the track, and whatever I face, there is no turning back. When you go out to win, there is so much to lose, but this is my life, the life that I choose. If it isn't safe, I'll take that leap of faith. I have dreamed, I have dared. Now I'm prepared to go out and take my chances and to make no mistake that while I'm awake, I'm gonna go out and take my chances. When life seems uphill, remember you're still ascending. Life will enhance if you just take a chance on a happy ending. That's why I'm taking my chance. And to make no mistake that while I'm awake, dreams are not for forsaking. Happy endings need making, and that is why I'm taking my chances.
For more information about Sleeping Beauty the musical, please just search Sleeping Beauty the musical on SoundCloud or visit Ian Curran's website at iancurran.com. Are you a writer, composer, or artist who creates original work? Well, get in touch. I want to play your stuff on the show so more people can hear your work. Please send any recordings that you have with full permission to use on the show, along with some information about yourself and your work, to info@arian-productions.com, as we're passionate about supporting new work and sharing it with our loyal listeners.
Hi, this is John Barr, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
I'm a bit out of chronology with the credits, but who cares? Let's talk about a place that's very dear to your heart, the Menier Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
So at the Menier, you did. Now, let me just go through all of them, because some of these, I know there's one particular piece that means a great deal to you. But in particular, at the Menier, you did The Last 5 Years, The Invisible Man, They're Playing Our Song, and of course, the UK premiere of Maltby and Shire's Take Flight.
Yes.
So was The Last 5 Years the very first time you'd worked at the Menier?
Yes, I was. I know David Babani very well. We go back a long time, and we used to put on shows at Jermyn Street and things like that with me, Caroline Humphries, Martin Lowe, Matthew White, and David Babani. We used to it's brilliant. Yeah. So anyway, he'd asked me to do Sandy in the Park with George originally, and honestly, it was the one thing in my career that at the time I'd contracted to do West Yorkshire Playhouse, and it was contracted a couple of shows, and at the time, because the Menier had just started, I'd already signed, so I couldn't do it. So, David he was so kind, always wanted me to be on board. Anyway, so
you turned down that production of Sunday in the Park with George, my favourite musical production I've ever seen.
And me too. And it's sort of, anyway, moving swiftly on, we will, he then asked me to do, I think next was Last 5 Years. So it was lovely Matthew White directing, who I've worked with quite a bit indeed, Demon Headmaster.
Yeah.
And he asked me to come and do the movement for it, and I loved the piece. It was Lara Pulver and Damien Humbley, and it was just incredible. Because the music, again, it was new. It's the premiere in the UK of it, and Jason came over and worked with it. Jason indeed cast those two in it. And I knew Lara very well. I knew both of them very well, but I knew Lara particularly very well because I'd done Brenda Bligh with her.
Oh, Brenda Bligh, Teen Detective.
Yeah.
With Cassidy as well.
That's right. Cassidy and Lara were in it. So I knew Lara really well. And it was lovely because Lara's, of course, a dancer. And so, she was, I could do anything with her. And she was able to do it. And but there was more than that. It was wonderful exploring the piece and exploring about how we were going to do the change of time and exploring the wedding scene and the little bits of dance and how they fitted into the piece. So that was wonderful. And it was wonderful because I was at Mountview at the time, actually. And so I had a great cred with the students, because everybody at that time loved, Jason Brown, of course, as they do now.
Did he remember working with you for Songs for a New World as well? Did he?
I think he kindly said yes. I'm not sure whether he did, but I know when he came, he said, "Oh, yes, Sam, yes." And he was a little more involved in this one, I think, because it was very close to his heart. And no, he's great. He's got a great sense of humor. Actually, very dry, Jason, but very pedantic and sort of very, detailed, like Paul Sabin, about what he wants. So it was great.
And that would have been. I mean, that's at a time. It's odd. Because this is my time at Mountview, sort of. This is the same time as shows like Tick Tick Boom, for example, with Cassidy.
I know.
The first time it had been seen in this country. Obviously, it was David Babani and Danielle Trento, which a lot of people forget about. They built what it is now.
There's nothing more exciting than doing new shows. And, we talked about our work together and the Bridewell, and then this, the Menier Chocolate Factory. Again, I feel so privileged to have done so many new shows. It doesn't really matter to me that, whether they do, well, be lovely, don't get me wrong, but it's doing them and you're putting a print on the choreography or the work. So it's it's a really wonderful thing to do in your career.
So you said that from doing the last 5 years, you then went on to their Playing Our Song.
Yes, that's right. Fiona Laird was asked me to become involved in that, and it was wonderful because Connie Fisher was in it, and Connie I'd taught at college, of course, and it was lovely. It was the first time I'd worked with a student that I trained.
No, was it really?
Yeah, and she was lovely because Connie. And the thing is about working at Mountview is that whilst you're their teacher and mentor, there's still communication. It was a real privilege because Connie, was always so wonderful, and it was her first really, big break as a lead in, obviously after her big success.
Oh, so this is after she had done the TV show?
Yeah, absolutely. And she'd come back and done this lead role, and it was one of those quirky pieces. And again, I knew it quite well from my youth. I remember the songs in it, but the piece is quite tricky, but it's quite dated and pastiche, and it sort of was quite tricky to get it going. I found it quite, it's quite a job, although it was really enjoyable. Really
well.
enjoyable.
I remember it being so well received. Now, this is a show which I don't know much about, and has had all sorts of infamous stories about it, and I can't wait to hear it from the horse's mouth. Pardon the turn of phrase. The Invisible Man.
Oh,
what was the Invisible Man, and what were some of the challenges that the Invisible Man faced?
Well, this is the funny thing, right? That I was asked to do the Invisible Man. Ian Talbot was directing, and it was a piece, a play with music, and it was about a man. Obviously, who couldn't be seen, and it was. But the funny thing about it was that it was a magic show, and so all my experience, as I've spoken about before, with choreographing all the magic shows, I knew sort of what was going to happen, and it was amazing because the set was like a death trap because everything was set up, geared to create magic, and so not only Maria Friedman was in it, John Gordon Sinclair. was in it. He's such a lovely man. Well, they both are, but John's so wonderful.
Maria's not a lovely man, but lovely.
Maria's so generous, so it was just a wonderful cast, a really experienced, wonderful cast, and it was, but it was so complicated, and so choreographically, I had to watch out for wires here, there and everywhere, and not giving too much away. And but because luckily, it's funny how things come around in your career. Luckily, I had a sense of that, and so I was able to accommodate. And it was a really lovely experience, and it was one of those little gems. Actually, it was really like 60s sort of vaudeville, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
Now, all three of those shows, as wonderful as they are, I know that you hold one very, very, very dear to your heart. I was very fortunate to see it take flight by Maltby and Shire, starring, amongst others, but possibly one of the best things I've ever seen Mike Gibson do. I was obviously now playing King George in Hamilton, and just about to leave Hamilton as John Robbins from Our Dessa Rose steps in. It's all such a small business.
Isn't that funny?
Tell me about Take Flight. For people who don't know what Take Flight, what is it?
Right. Well, Take Flight is the most recent Maltby and Shire musical, and it's probably their baby, and it's the thing they wanted to launch the most. Excuse the pun. It was. And for me, I'd grown up with Maltby and Shire and the musical theatre in the 80s. And so they were musical directors on it, as well as the lovely Caroline Humphries.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were. So Caroline was doing the main work, and they came over and were, a change, because it was half written, or I think it had been written before, but they wanted to rewrite it for this experience.
Wow.
And Sam Buntrock was the director, wonderful director. And we all worked together. And it had these incredible people in, and it was just, I don't know why, but it just got to me, the sentiment of it. It was the most incredible story about pioneers of aviation, and it was about people achieving and people and how their relationships affected that. And I learned so much. But more than that, it was the most beautiful score. And it was soaring, literally soaring with the planes. And Sally Ann Trippett was in it. Sam Kenyon again was in it. Michael was in it.
I remember the Amelia Earhart. So it's the Wright brothers.
Yes.
Amelia Earhart, and there's somebody else. I'm trying to remember. So long ago.
The Wright brothers. Amelia. I don't know. Is there a third?
I remember the Amelia Earhart story being particularly...
Well, that was the main story, that everything was... It was about the Wright brothers against, that story, and the story... it was just heart-wrenching. But somehow it was beautiful, these people together. And again, as I say, with Maltby and Shire being involved, we were able to rewrite and, reinvent. And John Wiseman was there, meeting these amazing people who'd written the book. And I think, because I have been lucky enough to work with the songwriters, and I really enjoy that, because I can learn, and all these great people that I've admired, being able to work with them and work alongside, I think. And honestly, it was I think the fault of it was so long. There was so much material to get in, and it was too long. And I just hope there's another version of it.
Maybe you and I should write to them and just be like, can we do a workshop somewhere? Just for, see if we can get a drama school
I'd be interested to see if they're still up for it, because it was very, very long, but everything in it was so relevant. Yeah. And it was one of the most beautiful scores. Amazing.
And I remember choreographically, you did a really beautiful thing where you use fingers to trace the journey of the plane. I can't give justice to what you did, because it was just... Well, it was,
Sam Buntrock's idea about it was a ribbon, and then we workshopped it to make it work. So that's what happened. So it was, again, a wonderful instruction from a wonderful director. Like yourself, it's sort of, it inspires. And so we then got everyone in the room and workshopped how we passed it and how they turned away.
I remember.
And it's wonderful, wasn't
Theatrical
it?
bliss.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just pure bliss. I agree with you that the show's long, but do you know, maybe we need to do some research and see if we can get it back, because we always talk about Take Flight. Whenever we get together, we always go, remember you directed, remember you choreographed Take Flight. Like
a lot of people do, actually. A lot of people remember it, that, I wouldn't have thought I'd gone to see it, and they say, oh, you did Take Flight. It does really hold a lot of people love it.
This is Kumiko Mendel, Artistic Director of Yellow Earth Theatre. You are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
And now for something completely different. talking about the teeny tiny, beautiful, wonderful places like the Menier Chocolate Factory, such as Trafalgar Studios, even the Bridewell to some extent. But then you did an arena tour, which is just a little bit different, with none other than Matt Lucas and David Walliams for Little Britain Live.
Yes.
So how on earth did that happen? Like, what?
Well, honestly, that was one of the best jobs I've ever done. Experiences. It lasted, a couple of years because it went on and on and on. And at the time, Little Britain was at the height of its success as well. And the lovely Jeremy Sams who was directing and asked me. I know Jeremy. He'd asked me if I'd choreograph it. And again, I'd. It's just. I was at Mountview at the time. It was fantastic. So I went in the room, and I remember meeting them, and bless them. They came up to me and it said, "Oh, hello, I'm Matt Lucas," and I'm thinking, I know, and but it was, and I had one of the and Tony Head was there, and Anthony Head and Ruth Jones was there. We just had this amazing cast, and again, lovely people. And we just laughed and laughed and laughed and invented what we needed to invent. I think I was one of the routines was Daffith, who was the
only gay in the village.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember choreographing this routine, and David was watching me choreograph, and he's such a nice man, David, and very like me, both of them are very involved in what they do and take it very seriously, although they have a laugh. And I remember at one point I was choreographing and David came up to me and said, "I don't know whether Daffith would do that step," and I'm thinking, "Oh, actually, you're right."
Yeah,
he would, because it was a real kind of I'd done the take on like the 80s disco with him, because I felt that he would like ABBA and things like that. And he came, and there's one step that I was trying to get Matt to do, and I remember David came up to me and said, "I don't know whether Daff would do it." And we both looked at each other and we thought, "No, you're right, he wouldn't." And it was so lovely because he was so interested in what I was doing, and also he. And also he was right, and it was that lovely moment of us like just taking Daffith very, very seriously, and it was the most wonderful thing actually, and it was really strange because the girl they used as the makeup artist was the same girl that used to do my makeup when I was a dancer, and because you saw the same makeup artists all the time. I worked for ITV mainly, and she was the lead, and I hadn't seen her all those years.
Wow.
And I was then choreographing, and Lisa, her name was, and she was doing the makeup. And so it was this amazing tour, and this, it was the best press night I've ever been to. And we started at the Apollo Hammersmith, and it was, the crowd was just so amazing. And they came on stage, and the boys, they worked so hard. They, their craft. Again, it's everyone that I respect and admire seems to have this ethic, of course they do, but this is beyond the call of duty. And they used to pull me by the side when they weren't, there was no sound check, said, "Sam, would you go through that step with me again?" and all this kind of thing. But I remember like watching it, and it was so funny. It was just so funny. And there's a little bit of like room for ad-libbing and things. And you sort of, and my favourite character at the time, I think, was Anne.
Oh yeah.
Really, for some reason, I don't know why I found that funny, but it was just so funny. She just made me laugh so much. And anyway, then it went on. We put it into all venues, a UK tour, and then so it lasted a couple of years, and it was one of the best jobs I've ever done, I have to say, because it was everyone was wonderful. It was so high profile, amazing press night, and just a wonderful opportunity. It's so diverse from the things I do, but it was wonderful.
You've also done a ton of work for Kilworth House, for example, and I know you recently did Flight for Scottish Opera. I know you've done G&S productions. I mean, you name it, you've done it. But what will be lovely for people listening to your voice who would have, been taught by you, Sam Spence-Lane's just been working for the RSC, I believe.
I certainly have. Had a lovely summer, a lovely hot summer in Stratford with the swans and everything. It was wonderful. Yeah, so I did the Merry Wives of Windsor this year, and it's going to Barbican in a few weeks, which is lovely. Going to be seeing the Barbican over Christmas. And it was one of those opportunities which, I love doing plays. I absolutely love doing plays, and I've done quite a few plays.
Yeah,
actually.
Loads.
And really, again, I'm interested in how dance fits into it. And concept the director wanted for Fiona Laird again, who I did They're Playing a Song, wanted for this production was quite quirky. I won't tell you because it's still on, but it's quite out there and quite unusual. So, we had quite a lot of workshops on it, and it was just so wonderful because the cast are amazing.
Yeah.
And they love the dance because it slightly goes into hip-hop-y sort of type. It starts off in Elizabethan and then it breaks into hip-hop. And the cast couldn't have been more fun. And, I was, because sometimes actors find it a bit intrusive, when you have to teach them, because it was a big old routine. It was sort of quite at the beginning and the end. But the crowd, it was just so wonderful. It was like we were all having a good time clubbing. And they were learning. They would come up to me, and again, in their breaks, they had so much on because they're in rep with other productions. So, they have to learn so much. But still, they would come up to me and say, Sam, what's that step? And am I doing it right? And is this the way hip hop goes? And, this kind of thing. It was just wonderful. And, as I said, a lovely summer working with really lovely people. And then when you see them, it's really, I was working with them on the dance and trying to get this sort of very comedy number almost up. And then you go and see them play, Romeo and Juliet, and they're incredible. Yeah. And it's so different, and what was so impressive about them was they were so up for change and up for trying new things. Yeah. And so if you said jump, they say how high. It was just lovely.
I think what's beautiful though is, from anybody listening, that again might have been taught by you, people here, Sam's not at Mountview anymore, but look at everything that you've gone on to achieve and everything that's ahead of you. So I'm very, very proud of you, you extraordinary woman.
Hello, this is Kim Ismay, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats, and I hope you're having a wickedly interesting time.
It's time for My Favourite Things. Sam Spencer Lane, I am going to strand you on tour in digs in Whitley Bay. I need to know what you're going to need to survive. I'm going to ask you what album, film, TV box set, game, book, play, musical, and luxury item would be that you would need to survive. We're going to start with the album. What would be the album that you would need?
The album I would need is probably Aretha Franklin's Greatest Hits.
I was listening to Aretha Franklin literally just before you arrived. I was having a bit of a gay out because you walked in when I had Judy Garland on.
Yes, I did.
I'm really reasserting my gayness there. And what about the film?
The film is probably going to be Manhattan.
Oh, beautiful choice.
Yeah, I love Woody Allen. And Manhattan's just so visual and beautiful.
And the TV box set, any TV show you wish.
TV box set, probably Will and Grace.
and the game. Now the game could be not that I think you play a PlayStation, but it could be an electronic game. It could be a board game that you can play with the landlady that runs the digs. You can have any kind of game. What would it be?
This is really easy for me because I'm a bit of an organised, fun person. It'd be Pass the Pigs.
And what would be the book?
I think it would be 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini.
Which is the same author as The Kite Runner, I believe.
Yes, I believe it is actually, yeah.
What's so wonderful about the book, Sam?
It was given to me a present by a very good friend, Matt Ryan. He gave it to me on my birthday. And it's just a wonderful story about survival, really. And it's just beautiful. I don't know why it affected me, but it just affected me about struggle for life, really. Yeah. It's just incredible. So that would be the book.
And equally difficult question, what would be the play?
There's so many, actually. There's but something that I worked on, which is a new writing, was Hackney Carriage.
Right.
And we workshopped it with a writer at Lambda, and that was the most extraordinary story.
What is the story?
It's about, it's quite complex. It's about trafficking with organ donation and that kind of subject. And it was just the most extraordinary piece. Yeah. So that was sort of, there's so many. I love a version of To Kill a Mockingbird that I saw at Birmingham Rep once. And I love Romeo and Juliet.
Well, you've already got Romeo and Juliet because you've got the complete works of Shakespeare.
Yes,
but
exactly.
I will watch this space and hopefully look forward to seeing this play whenever it happens.
Yeah, I hope so.
Now, this might be an equally difficult question. a musical, what musical do you need to survive Whitley Bay?
I've already spoken about West Side Story, which is probably my all-time favourite, but also Company and Follies come very, very close in my life, and I can't, for so many reasons, Follies, you know, they're just wonderful. So if I can have 3, that would be amazing if I was very, very good.
For you, Dame Spencer Lane, anything. And finally, your luxury item.
My luxury item would probably be a cat.
You can have a cat.
Toby Page.
You cannot have that cat.
No.
That's my podcat. Bless him.
This is West End producer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the sumptuous, the savoury, and the slightly sugary Andrew Keats. Dear.
Well, we are drawing to a close, Sam Spencer Lane, but I cannot let you leave until we play the Show People podcast's most famous game, Funny 5 Minutes. Sam Spencer Lane, I'm going to ask you some of the most random, obscure, and frankly ridiculous questions in the next 5 minutes. You are allowed 3 passes, but use them wisely because you never know what I'm going to ask. Sam Spencer Lane, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Spencer Lane, what is your favourite type of dance?
Favourite type of dance is tap.
If you were going to be an animal, what animal would you be?
A dolphin.
Why a dolphin?
Dunno. Just love them.
Do you have a favourite sport?
Yes, I love badminton.
What is your most annoying habit?
My most annoying habit is laughing after everything, apparently.
Do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Of course you do.
Yes. Gosh.
Sweet or savoury?
Sweet.
If you had to jump into a swimming pool filled with something, what would it be?
Champagne.
I thought you were going to say dolphins. Who was your teenage crush?
Michael Jackson.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Saucy there. Who would play you in a movie of your life?
Very, very good question. A movie of my life would be... I don't know.
Is it a pass?
It's a pass.
It's a pass. How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Scrambled, usually, sometimes poached.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be? Other than choreographing, obviously.
Yeah, invisible. Invisible.
What is your favourite television show right now?
Probably Strictly, actually, I have to say.
Oh, it's really interesting this season.
Yes.
We'll do a Strictly catch up afterwards. What is your favourite Disney film?
Favourite Disney film is Cinderella.
How many pairs of shoes do you own?
Quite a lot, but not ridiculous.
What do you think the meaning of life is?
Meaning of life is keeping hope.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I would like to do the one-on-one.
Just mano a mano?
Yeah.
What are the best kind of pants?
Best kind of pants are those that aren't seen.
What is the most delicious thing you can cook?
Risotto.
Oh, you do a really good risotto,
yes.
Actually. I've had it. Do you have a teddy bear?
Yes, I've got 2.
What are their names?
Snowy, how dull, and Bertie.
Is line dancing cool?
Line dancing is cool for some.
Well, that was such a collapse. Who is the most beautiful person you've ever kissed?
Most beautiful person I've ever kissed is, I think, my last ex-boyfriend.
Saucy. Andrew Lloyd Webber or Stephen Sondheim?
Stephen.
I know, it's
Stephen.
Just, everyone says it and I agree. What is the most unusual thing you've ever put in your mouth? The most unusual.
Pass.
Pass. There's a pass!
Yay!
Frafi ate a guinea pig, did you know? If you ordered a pizza, what would your order be?
Veggie pizza. Vegetarian pizza.
What would your last meal be?
Oh, I know this one so much. I'd have 2. So last meal. It would be a sweet and sour chicken, a really bad one, really bad, proper takeaway one, and a roast dinner.
What is your favourite season?
Oh, I think it's autumn.
What has been your most embarrassing moment on stage?
I fell off the stage as a dancer into the orchestra pit when I was doing a Dessa show.
No.
Yes, and they had to stop the show and get me up. Yes, amazingly, I rebounded. But we were doing a circle of doom. We were like skipping around in a circle, and my hands were slippy, and we were going fast because that's what we do. And he slipped and fell off the stage and into the orchestra pit.
Hitting every member of percussion on your way down.
Hurrah.
Well, sadly, that noise tells me, Sam, that is the end of the show. But before we go, of course, a few parish notices. Firstly, thank you to everyone from Sleeping Beauty for sending in your fantastic song from that lovely show. But ladies and gentlemen, please go mad for the one, the only, Sam Spencer Lane! Thank you so much for doing this.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Andrew.
Right, well, until next time when we get together, where there are no microphones.
Absolutely.
And folks, now every time you hear someone mention Sam Spencer Lane, this is the remarkable lady herself. Sam, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to on social media? Or I don't think you do social media, do you?
No, I'm a bit rubbish at that actually at the moment. So I just know.
Well, in that case, if you want to know what Sam's doing, phone her agent. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Keats. You can follow the show at ShowPeopleUK. And you can also use hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast. Don't forget, we also have an Instagram account. So if you want to see what's going on behind the scenes, just follow us at Show People Podcast on Instagram. And you can also send me an email to info@arian-productions.com if you want to get in touch. And you can even follow our Facebook page at facebook.com/Show People Podcast, where you can also join the listeners forum and talk with other listeners to the show. Now, Christmas is coming. Why not write to Santa and ask for a Show People Podcast mug or pen? Because all profits from any of our merchandise goes towards helping us run the show. So if you fancy a Show People Podcast mug or pen, go to arian-productions.com/shop. And hopefully you'll have an exciting Show People Podcast surprise in your stocking. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. If you love the show, please take just 2 minutes to leave us a little review on iTunes or indeed whatever platform you listen to us on, and help us continue to create this free fortnightly podcast. If you want to make a little donation, well, you can do that too. arian-productions.com/donate. The more money we raise, the more opportunities we can make for theatre makers. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and support the show. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, show people, just be better. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 100... Sorry. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or... Okay, which term originally referred to the dance music of Spanish gypsies? Gavotte, mazurka, fandango, flamenco, or... I can't say the last one. Zarzuela. What is it? Zarzuela? Do you know what Zarzuela?
No.